Hello, dear reader. Welcome back. It's good to have you here. Today, you learned more about reality, what it is, how you perceive it, and how your psychic house helps you make sense of it. You learned that there is an external reality, the world outside you, what actually happens, and an internal reality, your emotions, feelings, thoughts, memories, and the meaning you give to what happens. Both matter. Your internal reality tells you what you are experiencing, but it does not always tell you what is actually happening outside you. And when the two disagree, external reality ultimately prevails. You may feel responsible, but this does not necessarily mean that you are responsible. You may feel rejected, but this does not necessarily mean that you have been rejected. You may believe that something should happen, could happen, or must happen, but reality may answer differently. All in all, external reality, the one that ultimately prevails, is what can say no. And we tend to think of this no as something fundamentally negative, a restriction, an obstacle, a frustration, something standing between us and what we want. But a no is not always a deprivation. Sometimes it is a liberation. Think of Julian. When his friend was sad, Julian felt that he needed to help. His feeling was real. His sense of responsibility was real. But reality said, no, your help was not requested. No, you do not have to solve this. No, you are not responsible for making everyone feel better. For Julian, this no can bring enormous relief. I do not have to do everything. I do not have to fix everything. I can care about someone without becoming responsible for them. We often notice what reality's no takes away from us. We notice less often what it frees us from. But liberation can also be unsettling. If Julian is no longer the friend who always helps, reassures, and finds solutions, then who is he in a friendship? What is his place? What is his role? Can he simply listen? Can he be present without doing anything? Can he need something too? These questions do not have immediate answers, and that is often what working on yourself really means. It is not simply identifying a pattern and deciding to stop repeating it. When an old pattern disappears, it leaves an empty space. You then have to discover how you want to live without it. For Julian, reality's no does not tell him exactly who to become. It simply tells him, you no longer have to be this. And from there, something new can begin. There is something else you learned today. Reality has a date. Reality does not say, nobody will ever love you. It may say, this person does not want a relationship with you. Reality does not say, you will never succeed. It may say, this project did not work. Reality does not say, nothing is possible. It may say, not this, not here, not now, not this way. This distinction is essential. Your patterns generalize. Reality is specific. And because a real no is specific, it does not close the whole of reality. It gives reality a shape. We often try to avoid obstacles. We imagine that a good life would be a life in which nothing stands in our way. But imagine trying to find your way through a world with no limits, no obstacles, and no signs telling you where you cannot go. You would not be free. You would be lost. A no gives you information. It tells you, not this way. And only then can you begin to ask, then which way? This is why so many people who describe how they eventually succeeded begin by telling you what they had to give up. A project that failed, a path they could not follow, a relationship they had to leave, a version of themselves they had to stop trying to become. Success stories are often told as stories of achievement, but many of them begin as stories of renunciation. Not because giving up automatically leads to something better, but because you cannot find a possible path while continuing to walk toward an impossible one. And this is where reality becomes more interesting. A no does not promise you a yes. But sometimes accepting one no allows you to see a yes that was invisible before. You did not get this job. Perhaps another direction becomes possible. This relationship cannot become what you wanted it to be. Perhaps you can finally discover what kind of relationship is actually possible, or what you truly need. You cannot become the person your ideal ego demands. Perhaps you can begin to discover the person you can really become. Reality is constantly changing. Circumstances change. Other people change. You change. And because reality changes, it contains possibilities that you cannot always see in advance. The problem is that you often cannot see them while you are still fighting a no. Sometimes, what looks like the end of one possibility is simply the moment when reality becomes visible again. But to use reality's obstacles as landmarks, you first have to encounter them. And today, there is something that can make this increasingly difficult. Screens. The problem with screens is not simply that they take your time. They can also interrupt your contact with reality whenever reality becomes uncomfortable. You are bored. You scroll. You feel lonely. You open an app. You fail at something. You distract yourself. You do not know what to do next. More content immediately appears. Little by little, screens can create an environment in which nothing has to remain empty, frustrating, uncertain, or unavailable for very long. But these experiences contain information. Boredom may tell you that something is missing. Frustration may tell you that one path is blocked. Loneliness may tell you that you need contact. Failure may tell you that something needs to change. If every uncomfortable encounter with reality is immediately covered by stimulation, you may escape the discomfort, but you also lose the information. Reality will not always give you what you want. Sometimes it will tell you that something is impossible. Sometimes that something is over. Sometimes that a person cannot give you what you need. And sometimes, as Julian discovered, it will tell you that something was never yours to carry. A no may hurt. A no may disappoint you. A no may force you to give up a role, a hope, or a version of the future, but a no also tells you where reality is. And from there you can begin again. Not from the future you imagined. Not from what your ideal ego demands. Not from what your psychic house fears. From what is actually here. Do not ask reality to remove every obstacle. Learn to use its obstacles to find your way. Because sometimes, only after you accept what is not possible can you begin to see what still is. Reality does not always say yes. That is precisely why its yes means something, and tomorrow we will explore what happens when accepting reality's no becomes too difficult. Because sometimes, instead of accepting a limit, we turn toward something that seems to never say no. See you tomorrow.